Welcome or welcome back. Today's project is going to be a timing belt and water pump on a Acura MDX 3.5 VTEC. The year is 2006. I went ahead and purchased the entire timing belt and water pump kit. I like that because it actually comes with different pulleys and all the parts you're going to need to do a job like this. Now, if you're here, you're just trying to get the knowledge to do the job. Okay, timing belt, different pulleys, new retaining bolts, timing belt tensioner, preloaded, idler and adjustment pulley, and of course, a new water pump. Do you have to do a water pump when you're doing one of these jobs? Technically, no, but I find that if for some reason, because this is part of the timing belt assembly kit, you're gonna wanna replace it, because if you don't, and then it starts to leak, you gotta do it all over again. And I do not recommend using a timing belt over after it's been run. For reasons like stretch and everything else, you want to make sure that for the cost of a belt, that you're not putting on a weakened belt because it's already stretched, preloaded. Even though they're not technically a stretch and preload belt, it's just a good habit to get into. All right, and with that, we'll take off the cover. Okay, the first part of the job you're going to have to do is to get the power steering pump and the belt off out of your way. There's a couple of different ways to do it. You know, you could just pull it off to here and maybe bungee cord it over. I actually like to take off the hose here, suck the system down so that you get all the old power steering fluid out, because it's not a bad time to at least refresh that system. Plus, it won't leak all out if you do it that way. And then take this away and put it over here, which you'll see in the time-lapse video. If you're just checking to see if your timing belt's off, you can pull this plug and this plug and use a mirror to look inside there. We'll be gaining access to all of this area, removing a whole bunch of pieces in here and here. Tire on the passenger side front, the shields below so that we can get to the lower pulley to pop that off. Obviously remove the front mount and the mount that goes into the block itself, because that will be in our way for what we're gonna do. All right, the tools we're gonna use today on this job, there's an array of them. This tool over here is for removing the serpentine belt, and also because of its low profile nature, I use it to pop off some of and or loosen some of the bolts on the side of the engine. 19 millimeter, this is actually a flip socket used for taking off lugs. It works very well. We'll also need this for the locking nut. I'll also use this on the harmonic balancer. We have an array of sockets. They're all 3/8. We have 1/2 inch, that's a 17 millimeter that we'll be using. These are all 3/8. Sizes range from 17, 14, 12, and a deep 14. Tool to remove the clips, 1/2 inch swivel socket, 14 millimeter. Couple of different extensions for the 1/2 inch. I will be using air tools on this, but they're not necessary for the job. They just make it faster for filming purposes and for life in general. Removal of the power steering feed line, again, makes life a little easier and faster. It's a cordless V-impact. We have a torque wrench here for when we're reassembling. A couple of different arrays, 1/2 inch, 3/8 drive. And then to pop off the cover for the bolts for the main cover of the engine, we use the flat blade screwdriver. I might use a couple of different tools depending on how it goes, but this is the array of what I'm going to be using mostly today. Okay, whenever working on a car where you're going to be around any of the electrical stuff, just make sure to disconnect your battery. It's a good habit to get into. Yes, it's annoying when you lose your stations on your radio. It's much better than frying your electrical system. I recommend, again, this is positive, but always double check. Look on the battery. And the reason why I say that, okay, you can actually see the positive symbol right there, is because I've seen people replace these with what was ever cheap and it had red on it, and you just make this assumption that this is what you're going to use. Always double check. Double check the negative, double check the positive. You can do just as much damage by hooking it up backwards as you can by just not paying attention and thinking you're doing the right thing. So always double check, and also make it so that the cable itself cannot accidentally slide over and make a contact, especially like on this job. I'll be doing the most likely fooling with the alternator. Okay, just a helpful tip. Okay, hopefully that was pretty self-explanatory through the time lapse. Again, at the beginning of the video, I went over the tools that I'm using. I hopefully remembered to get them all in there. The hardest issue I had was the fact that one, tools were a little on the slippery side, so I kept dropping them. But hopefully I'll edit that all out, make myself look better. The amount of, this is actually the PCM for this car. In previous ones I've done, this wasn't in my way, but this was in the way to get this out of the way and the main mount out of the way for this side. Now, the reason I haven't taken this off yet is because it is actually under the lower timing belt cover. You have your two uppers, and then you have your lower one. You don't want to force it out because you end up breaking this plastic. This is aluminum, this is plastic. You can guess who would lose in a battle. Again, the next phase of this project is to go through the wheel well to get the main crank pulley off, get this timing belt cover off, and then that allows me full access to actually time this out. Before you take this belt off, you want to make sure that everything is lined up on their notches. There's little marks on the cogs, or the timing gears, whatever you want to call them, that have to line up with a mark that is predetermined on here. You just want to make sure that everything is lined up before you take this off. If you don't, it just makes your life much, much more stressful and harder existence. And with that, go ahead and get the vehicle jacked up, put on a jack stand for safety, pop the wheel off, and lower the engine down so that I can gain access to that. I'm pretty sure it's a 19mm bolt, and most of the time on the Hondas and the Acuras, I have to heat it up to get it off. So that's going to be the only part that hairy homeowner or the person watching this video might have difficulty with. Now at the bottom, it does become a lot easier to do this job if you're using an air tool to get that bolt off. Is it impossible to do without air? No, but it's a lot easier, and I'm gonna go the easy route today.